Donald Trump has never thought silence was a strategy. To him, silence is surrender. If there is empty space, it must be filled, preferably with volume, bravado, and something provocative enough to keep attention fixed where he wants it. For years, that instinct worked. He dominated cycles not by depth, but by disruption. If the room was chaotic, he was winning. So, when Trump turned his attention toward Barack Obama, no one was surprised by the approach. The insults were familiar. Questions about competence, jabs at leadership style. The framing was predictable. Trump as the tough truth-teller, Obama as the polished but ineffective figurehead. The performance had an audience ready. Cameras rolled. Supporters leaned in. Everyone waited for the collision. What they got instead was a pause. Obama didn't react the way Trump expected. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't fire back. He didn't sharpen his tone or reach for a clever insult. He smiled slightly, not smugly, not dismissively, but patiently. And then he spoke. It wasn't a viral one-liner. It wasn't designed for chance or merchandise. It was calm, deliberate, almost understated. Obama said that leadership isn't about insults or volume, but about responsibility, results, and respect for the people you serve. That was it. No escalation, no sparring, just a reframing so clean it caught everyone off guard. The room changed immediately. Crowds that had been primed for entertainment fell quiet. Commentators stopped stepping on each other's words. The oxygen drained from the spectacle. Something heavier replaced it. Comparison. Trump's approach suddenly felt louder than necessary. Obama's response felt anchored. This wasn't accidental. Obama understood something Trump never has. Power doesn't always need to prove itself. Sometimes it just needs to hold still long enough for the contrast to become obvious. Late-night comedy had already been circling this difference for years. When Obama later joked about Trump on stage, referencing Celebrity Apprentice and the famous "you're fired" moment, it wasn't cruelty, it was precision. The joke landed because it exposed the gap between performance and governance. One man played authority on television. The other had carried it. These are the kinds of decisions that would keep me up at night, Obama said deadpan. The audience laughed, but underneath the laughter was recognition. The joke worked because it wasn't exaggeration. It was alignment. Obama didn't need to defend himself. He let Trump's own brand become the punchline. And that was the recurring theme of the exchange. Trump tried to provoke. Obama declined the invitation and changed the rules of the room. By refusing to engage on Trump's terms, Obama denied him the thing he feeds on most, reaction. There was no outrage to amplify, no anger to frame as weakness, just composure. That composure did something unexpected. It made Trump's insults shrink. Not because they were rebutted, but because they were left unsupported. Loud words without resistance don't always grow louder. Sometimes they echo, and echoing exposes emptiness. Viewers noticed immediately. Clips spread not because Obama had won an argument, but because he had refused to perform one. People replayed the moment again and again, not searching for cleverness, but absorbing the calm authority of it. Obama didn't say he was a better leader. He demonstrated a different kind of leadership. And in that quiet space where insults failed to land and noise lost momentum, the entire dynamic shifted. What made the moment so effective wasn't just what Obama said, it was what he refused to do. He refused to escalate. He refused to personalize. He refused to trade insults in a marketplace where volume masquerades as strength. And in doing so, he flipped the power dynamic without ever announcing that he was doing it. Trump's political style depends on friction. Insults are not a side effect. They are the engine. They create motion, attention, and a sense of battle that keeps the spotlight fixed. Every reaction validates the approach. Anger feeds it. Defensiveness strengthens it. Even outrage keeps it alive. Obama offered none of that. Instead, he treated the insult like background noise, acknowledged without being amplified, addressed without being indulged. That restraint wasn't passive. It was active discipline. It signaled something Trump's approach never could. Confidence that never needs to prove itself in the moment. The audience felt that immediately. You could see it in their posture. This wasn't the excitement of a fight. It was the stillness of recognition. People weren't choosing sides anymore. They were comparing behaviors. And comparison is dangerous territory for spectacle-driven politics. Trump's mockery suddenly looked theatrical. Obama's response looked grounded. One felt like someone chasing attention. The other felt like someone who already had it and didn't need to guard it. That's the irony Trump never accounts for. When you try too hard to dominate a moment, you reveal that you don't control it. When you remain composed under provocation, you quietly claim authority over the tone itself. Political analysts later described the exchange as strategic, but it was more instinctive than calculated. Obama had spent years operating under scrutiny that demanded restraint. He understood that leadership isn't tested when things are calm. It's tested when someone tries to knock you off balance. Trump tried. Obama didn't budge. And because Obama didn't budge, Trump's words had nowhere to go. They didn't escalate into a feud. They didn't spark a cycle of retaliation. They just landed. And without reaction, they lost momentum. That's when the reversal happened. Trump, who thrives on reaction, was left responding instead. His provocations faded into the background while Obama's demeanor became the story. The exchange stopped being about what was said and started being about how it was handled. Supporters of Obama recognized it immediately. They didn't cheer because he'd insulted back. They respected the restraint. Even critics, people who disagreed with his policies, acknowledged the effectiveness of the moment. It didn't feel like a win. Felt like leadership. That distinction matters. Winning an argument satisfies partisans. Demonstrating composure under fire resonates beyond politics. People saw something familiar in it. Teachers dealing with disruption. Managers facing provocation. Parents setting boundaries. The lesson was intuitive. When someone is trying to drag you into chaos, staying steady is a form of control. Obama didn't take the bait. He changed the temperature of the room. And once the temperature changed, Trump's style looked out of place. The insults felt loud in a space that had gone quiet, excessive, almost insecure. What had once been framed as toughness now felt like overcompensation. This is why restraint unsettles spectacle-driven figures. You can't overpower someone who won't engage on your terms. You can't dominate a stage if the other person refuses to perform. The moment passed quickly on television, but it lingered in memory, not as a clash, but as a contrast. Two approaches to power revealed side by side. One built on reaction, one built on steadiness. And in that contrast, something subtle but lasting shifted. The insult was forgotten. The response wasn't. Because dominance doesn't always come from speaking louder. Sometimes it comes from deciding that the noise isn't worth answering. What turned this exchange from a passing headline into something people still reference years later wasn't the setting or the personalities involved. It was the lesson it quietly delivered. Most political moments burn hot and disappear. This one cooled the room instead, and that made it stick. Obama's response worked because it aligned with something people instinctively understand but rarely see modeled at that level. Authority that doesn't rush to defend itself. In a media culture obsessed with instant rebuttals and viral clapbacks, the absence of aggression felt almost radical. Viewers weren't watching a debate anymore. They were watching a standard being set. That's why the sentence replayed so often. It wasn't clever. It wasn't sharp. It didn't rely on wordplay or sarcasm. It was simple and principled. And simplicity is dangerous in a noisy environment. When everything else is inflated, restraint feels heavier. It carries weight precisely because it doesn't try to. The moment also exposed how differently power can be communicated. Trump's approach depends on visibility, being seen, being heard, being dominant in the frame. Obama's power came from posture, from not needing to fill every second with words, from trusting that people could recognize substance without theatrics. That trust paid off. As clips circulated online, something interesting happened. Commentators stopped dissecting the insult and started analyzing the response. The narrative shifted from what Trump said to how Obama handled it. That shift is crucial. It meant the provocation failed to define the moment. Instead, the moment became instructional. People began applying it outside of politics, in workplaces, in classrooms, in personal conflicts. The takeaway was clear without being spelled out. You don't win respect by overpowering others. You earn it by remaining steady when challenged. This is why the exchange aged well. Many political moments rely on the emotion of the moment. Anger, excitement, outrage. When that emotion fades, so does the memory. But this moment wasn't built on emotion. It was built on contrast and values. And values don't expire as quickly. The restraint also reinforced something people already believed about Obama. Whether they agreed with him or not, many associated him with deliberation and composure. This response didn't create a new image. It confirmed an existing one. Confirmation is powerful. It strengthens credibility. Without needing persuasion. Trump supporters, meanwhile, largely saw the moment differently. Some dismissed it as smug or evasive. But even that reaction proved the point. Obama wasn't trying to convert opponents. He was signaling to observers, and observers decide narratives. The exchange also revealed a deeper truth about modern communication. Attention is not the same as influence. Trump commanded attention effortlessly. Obama commanded interpretation. People didn't just watch him. They thought about what he represented. That difference matters more than volume. Over time, the moment became shorthand for a broader idea that leadership is as much about emotional regulation as it is about policy. That how someone behaves under pressure can tell you more than what they say when prepared. When people recall the exchange now, they rarely quote the insult. They quote the response, or they describe the feeling it created, the pause, the shift, the quiet realization. That's the mark of a lasting moment. It didn't escalate conflict. It reframed it. It didn't entertain outrage. It invited reflection. And in a culture saturated with noise, reflection is rare. Obama didn't dominate the conversation by force. He redirected it by example. And that's why long after the cameras moved on, the moment still carries weight. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was disciplined. What ultimately made this moment powerful wasn't just Obama's restraint. It was the way it inverted expectations in real time. Political theater trains audiences to anticipate escalation. Louder voices, sharper insults. A winner and a loser decided by who draws more blood. Instead, Obama refused to give the scene what it wanted. And in doing so, he took control of it. That refusal created a power shift most people didn't consciously notice until after it happened. Trump entered the exchange expecting reaction. His style relies on friction. Without it, his attacks lose momentum. When Obama didn't rise to the bait, the insult had nowhere to go. It just sat there unanswered, unamplified, exposed. The absence of retaliation forced the audience to examine the original comment on its own merits. And without noise to prop it up, it felt smaller. This is where composure becomes strategy. Obama didn't just stay calm. He set a boundary. He communicated without saying it outright that not every provocation deserves engagement. That some statements are better diminished by being acknowledged and then outgrown. That move subtly repositioned Trump from aggressor to interrupter. Someone trying to derail rather than lead. The camera language told the story, too. Obama's posture stayed relaxed. His delivery was unhurried. He didn't rush to defend himself because he didn't perceive himself as under threat. That confidence reframed the entire exchange. Viewers weren't watching a man on the defensive. They were watching someone choose not to be dragged into a lesser conversation. That choice matters. In leadership, reacting is easy. Responding is harder. But choosing not to respond, to redirect instead, is hardest of all. It requires certainty in your own standing. Obama's sentence wasn't just a rebuttal. It was a signal that he trusted the audience to see the difference without it being spelled out. And they did. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was reflective. It gave people space to process the contrast unfolding in front of them. In that pause, authority shifted, not through dominance, but through clarity. This is why the moment still resonates. It represents an alternative model of strength. One that doesn't depend on humiliation or volume. One that understands that dignity can disarm more effectively than aggression. For many viewers, it felt like a reminder of something missing from public life. Leaders who don't need to perform toughness because they embody steadiness. That's also why the moment traveled beyond politics. People recognize the pattern in their own lives. The coworker who stays composed in a heated meeting. The parent who doesn't yell but still commands respect. The teacher who quiets a room without raising their voice. Obama's response fit into that universal framework of authority through restraint. Trump wanted to provoke a fight. Obama offered a standard, and standards outlast arguments. Long after the insult faded from headlines, the response remained a reference point. Not because it was dramatic, but because it modeled something aspirational. It showed that control doesn't come from overpowering others, but from mastering yourself in front of them. In the end, Obama didn't win the exchange in the traditional sense. There was no knockout line, no viral insult, but he achieved something more durable. He defined the terms of leadership without ever saying the word. Trump tried to pull the moment downward. Obama lifted it above the noise. And that's why years later, People still remember not the attack, but the calm that neutralized.